And when we opened it up, I was looking for a place. I found a small 5-room house. And I had nothing but a desk, and people in the neighborhood were helping me to open up this place. I needed a telephone, so I called the telephone company, and I had the person came and was installing the phone, and I had to leave to run an errand. When I came back, there was no phone, no telephone man, and the door was left wide open. So I called the telephone company, I said, "Where's the phone?" And so they connected me with a technician, and I said, "What happened?" I said, "You left the door wide open, there's no phone." He said he got scared, so he left. So I asked him, "Would you please come and install the phone?" He asked me, would you be there? I said, "Yes, I'll be here." So I had to stay with the telephone man the technician while he installed the phone, because he was afraid to be in that environment, in that street. And a few days later, a police officer saw me standing outside the house, and he practically took the curb, stopped the car, and jumped out and said, "What are you doing here? Don't you know this place is dangerous?" I said, "Well, then this is where the church needs to be." And that silenced him. So we opened up the house, and it filled up quickly. The first month, over 400 people came to the House of Mercy. The next month, over 600, over 1,000, over 2,000. And today, we have well over 4,000 people a month coming to the House of Mercy for help. So we not only have homeless people coming to the House of Mercy, but we are also a community, and we take care of people that are on the street. When we feed the homeless, we're feeding the hungry on the street. And we also do a lot of advocacy because we know the system that oppresses our people is so heavy, and we need to work through the hoops that keep our people oppressed. Now, when I opened up the House of Mercy, the first cries I heard were from mothers. "I have no food, my children are hungry. I have no beds, my children are sleeping on the floor. I have no stove, I have no refrigerator." And we found that was very true. And even up until today, we hear the same cries. I found many people not going to doctors because they didn't have medical insurance. I found many young people, too many young people with no teeth because they were not going to dentists, they didn't have the insurance. I found people penniless, I found them homeless. I found people being evicted from their apartments because they couldn't pay the rent. I found people without electricity because they couldn't keep up with utility bills. And they said at that time that in the winter they didn't turn off the electricity, but they did. I found that out. I found young people and older people who didn't have an education, couldn't read or write. And there was a 21-year-old youth that came to me, and in the privacy of my office, they'll tell me everything. So he said that he could not read or write, but nobody knew. And he said his mother would ask him what a word was, and he would guess at it. But it was okay, because his mother couldn't read either. And I found a 62-year-old woman who couldn't even tell time because she couldn't read numbers. A man in his 50s was living in a tin hut. He had no residence. Winter came, it was too cold. So he went to a neighbor and said, "I can't stay in my tin hut." So they directed him to the House of Mercy, and he came and he stayed with us until he died, and we buried him. I found in the wintertime people with no coats, no jackets, no boots, no gloves. Still find that today. I found people seeking spirituality, so we started Bible studies and with liturgies. I found people going to agencies for help, and they received no help, so they gave up. I found people, landlords told me that they would find people going to dumpsters for food. When the House of Mercy opened, all that stopped. I found children coming to the House of Mercy, and that was very sad. We had a young child, there was a family of a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. They were living with their foster grandmother. They would be at the House of Mercy from morning till night, morning till night. And I thought, something is wrong here. So when I checked it out, I found out that they had no electricity in their house for 2 years. So I talked to the child protective worker and I said, something needs to be done because they don't have electricity. She said to me, the problem is not bad enough for them to do anything. And that bothered me. And I was shocked to get that response. So the House of Mercy paid for the electricity so that they could have electricity. It was very expensive because 2 years of wiring was very bad. But even after the electricity was on, the family, the children kept coming to the House of Mercy. And I said, something else is wrong here. So the little boy who was 5 years old at the time, I brought him home one night in the car, and he was crying. He did not want to get out of the car. And he would not want to leave the House of Mercy, would hold on to everything just so he wouldn't have to go home. And he would be crying, and very often he had me in tears. So it's one night when I took him home, he didn't want to get out of the car. Then he heard his aunt was in the house. So he said, walk with me in the house. So I took a seat and we walked in. And then we found out the aunt was upstairs. So we started to walk upstairs, and the grandmother, the foster grandmother, shouts out, you can't go up there. And with that, the little boy bolted out of the house. It was dark at night, it was like 11 o'clock at night. He bolts out of the house, runs down the street, and I think, oh, we lost this little boy. When I got back to the car, he was there, crying in the back seat. He did not want to go into the house. So I said, this is it. He's never coming back here again. So we went to my office, and I set up, he slept in 2 chairs, I slept on 2 chairs, left the light on so he wouldn't be afraid. About 3 o'clock in the morning, the grandmother comes and wants to take him home. And I asked him, do you want to go home? He said, no. So I told her, leave him here, we'll take care of him. Well, I found out that he and the little girl had been sexually molested in their home, beaten, slammed against the wall, yelled at, screamed at. So he never really went back home, and we kept the little boy, and he's 11 years old now, so we're still working with him. But the problem the children have there, as well as the adults, I mean, we're seeing an awful lot of injustices in our whole system that needs to be changed. If I thought that I was seeing so many problems already, I was shocked. Another shock in my working in the inner city was all the people that were dying. They were dying so fast, one after the other. So we had, in 1 week we had, 2 weeks we had 5 funerals. In 3 months we had 25 funerals. People were dying from their impoverishment. And we had never gotten into the burial ministry before, so we had to do something because people were calling us and saying, someone in the family died, can you help us? Because they didn't know what to do. So we had to take care of the burials, and we did everything to give them dignified Christian burials. There was a man who was homeless, and he would come to the House of Mercy every day. Well, he was living with us, and then we found an apartment for him, which is what we do to try to move people on. So we found an apartment for him, and he moved into the apartment, but every night he kept coming back to the House of Mercy to sleep. He missed the camaraderie, the community at the House of Mercy. So we let him come, and then one morning, he didn't wake up. He had died in his sleep. So we held a funeral for him, and he was in his 50s, and the mother of his children, when she was in her 50s, came to the funeral. And there's a place for remarks, and she got up and she said, my biggest worry about Woody was that he would die all alone on the street with nobody there to care for him. And she said, but she was so happy that when he died in the House of Mercy, surrounded by friends. So in her grief, she could also be at peace. And we have many stories like that, that I can't tell you all of them today. But we got very heavily into advocacy, and after we had opened, someone came to me and said, a man was being evicted. Would I go see him? So I went to visit him, and he was in a room above a bar. The owner of the bar was the landlord, and the man had no place to live, so the landlord let him have a room upstairs on the second floor, and he was waiting for the man to pay his rent. Well, he couldn't pay his rent. He didn't have the money, and he was lame, inarticulate, illiterate, so he just sat in his room all day. So the landlord was going to evict him. So the first place I brought him was to welfare. That's the first step in getting on your feet, brought him to welfare. And we were out before the worker 5 minutes when she stood up and said, I can't help you. And I said, well, why not? And she said, he doesn't have a birth certificate. So this is a helping agency, so I said, well, will you please help him get a birth certificate? And she said, no, he has to get it himself. Well, he couldn't read or write. He had no money. He was born down south by midwife. Probably there wasn't any record of his birth, and they expected him to get a birth certificate. Well, she refused, and I was upset. And then we went back to the House of Mercy, and I thought, how am I going to help this man get his birth certificate? So I thought, well, let's go to Social Security. So I went to the Social Security office. We were with a woman, and she was asking us questions, and then she said, I can't help you. And I said, okay, he doesn't have a birth certificate. But then she said that he didn't have a Social Security card. He had one, but it wasn't his. All his ID had been burned in a fire, and he didn't know how to go about getting his ID, so she said she couldn't help him. So then I go back to the House of Mercy, I thought, how are we going to help this man? Calling all over. And finally, a week later, the woman from the Social Security office, she had compassion. She called me up and said that David's brother had come into the office, and she asked him the same question she had asked us, and the answers corroborated. So she said, bring him in. Brought him in, he's got his SSI immediately. But what it meant was he was eligible for it years before we even opened. But nobody was there to help him. And many people said, you know, we were here for a long time, but nobody cared for us until the House of Mercy opened. So the House of Mercy accepts everyone, no questions asked, 24/7. A homeless person or anyone with any kind of problem can come in any time, and we will do advocacy, we'll help them with whatever problems they have. They come to us because they have no place else to go. We're the place of last resort, really. Police send homeless people to us, hospitals send homeless people to us, other agencies send homeless people to us. So we're all always overcrowded, but we accept them because this is something we should all be doing, caring for the people who do not have, caring for our poor. Henry Nouwen, who writes in Hospitality, wrote this. I'm just going to read part of it to you, because we believe very strongly in hospitality and accepting the stranger and welcoming the stranger. And he says, in our world full of strangers, estranged from their own past, culture, and country, from their neighbors, friends, and family, from their deepest self and their God, we witness a painful search for an hospitable place where life can be lived without fear and where community can be found. It is possible for men and women to offer an open and hospitable space where strangers can cast off their strangeness and become our fellow human beings. And there is a Danish proverb that says, if there is room in the heart, there is room in the house. One thing I wanted to say about the funerals, when we opened up the House of Mercy, the county paid for the funerals. In March 1st, 2006, the county executive made an administrative decision to cut the funding for indigent burials. And since then, it's been terribly difficult for our people who are dying. They come to us crying because they don't have enough money to pay for the burials. The county now gives $12.50 for a burial. If someone wants to be buried instead of cremated, it's going to cost another $3,000. and our people do not have that kind of money. We get about four or 5 to 6 requests a week from people asking us to help them with their burials, to cover the cost. And of course, we don't have that much money. We do help, we always help, but you're talking about thousands of dollars. We beg the county to please change their policy, and they have not changed it yet. So that's another battle we are facing. Now, we opened the House of Mercy in 1985. So October 1st of this year, we were 32 years old. So we became settled, we had our shelter, we were taking in the homeless and anybody really who was in need. And 30 years later, history repeats itself. I think you're all aware of the downtown Civic Center garage when the county was going to evict the homeless from the garage. Now, many hundreds of homeless persons went to the garage, especially in the winter, because it had heat, there was space, and it was safe. So the county said they're going to evict the homeless from the garage. So we begged them. We begged the county not to close or not to evict them until a building was found for them. And we set up a meeting with the county so we could discuss this. A few days before the meeting was to be held, I got a phone call saying the meeting was called off. I begged them to hold the meeting. They wouldn't hold it. So we went to the county building and we protested and demonstrated, and 3 of us were arrested. And that still didn't work. So we got tents and we had the homeless, we pitched tents at the Washington Square Park downtown, and we told the homeless they can come there and we'll take care of them there. And they did. They came in large numbers every night. There were more and more coming. And the community came forth and helped us with food and blankets. And so we were there. And the homeless were taken care of, and then the 3rd day, I arrived at the park, and I was summoned to City Hall and told that the city would help us if we would remove the tents. So I went back to the group, and I said, this was nighttime now, and I said, the city said they'll help us if we move our tents. So I said, wherever you go, take your tents with you. Then I asked them, where do you want to go? And they said, under the bridge, the Susan B. Anthony Frederick Douglass Bridge. So this was nighttime. And it was a beautiful sight that night to see all the people from the community who came to help us with the homeless, pick up the tents and march down a few blocks to the area under the bridge. And we set up the tents there, food there, blankets, and people from the community kept coming and coming to help us take care of the homeless. And it was beautiful to see how the community responded. But then I think I remember also the demolition. They came in to demolish the tents. We didn't know that this was going to happen, but when we found out, we rushed down to the area and stood in front of the tents. They were already up, so they wouldn't be demolished, but there were many others that were already demolished. So while we were there, one of the homeless men had been out. He came back and found his tent was gone, and he was devastated because not only the few belongings they had were gone, plus all their ID. And you know, it takes time to replace ID. So while we were talking to him, he said, I felt very badly that my tent was gone. He said, but you know, there was a decorated Christmas tree here, and when I saw that gone, I cried. It reminded him of his youth. So they're under the tent. So we're thinking, since the county didn't do anything, we felt we needed to find a bigger building for the homeless that would take care of the people we had in our shelter and in those who were out on the street. We looked at over 41 buildings. A homeless man helped us find the building we're in now. Once we had the building, we thought, well, when we found the building, well, we don't have the money to pay for it. And a generous donor came forth and said he would pay for the building. Talk about miracles. $215,000, he paid for that building. All right, we had the building. Now what? It needed to be renovated, you know, we needed repairs and all. And Another generous donor who was an architect gathered other architects and construction workers and came in and established and built our new shelter, which is a beautiful new shelter. We have 82 beds. The first day when we opened up, March 20th, we opened up, and all of our homeless came from our older House of Mercy, and people on the street came. And the first day they were there, they said, this is like a hotel. They were so happy, and they still are happy. They said, and two of the homeless that came that day said, I'm going to turn my life around, because it's a beautiful place. So we have 82 beds, but we have like 125 to 149 people coming. So at night the beds are all filled, and we have to put out cots and take care of them. We get in trouble for it, but we're going to have them come because they have no place else to go. So it was really the community that came in to help us really was a tremendous, tremendous help to us. The first night, our homeless slept in the beds. The next day, they said, oh, I slept so well last night. Because most of them were sleeping out in tents or outside, and they had such a good night. And we have showers for the men and women. We have 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, snacks in between, and we feed not only the homeless that come to the House of Mercy, but everyone else outside that's hungry, street people that are hungry, and families that are hungry. We feed over 450 people a day. So we need money to continue for sustainability, and we invite you to come to the House of Mercy anytime to come and see us. But I was overjoyed one day when I was reading a book about Pope Francis, and I'm very encouraged by Pope Francis because he's the one that says go out and bring the poor in and take care of them. And our own founders, Catherine McCauley, in Dublin, Ireland, when she opened up House of Mercy, she said to the sisters, she says, go out into the streets and the alleys and find the poor and bring them in. She said, the poor need help today, not next week. And so that's one of my favorite quotes of hers. And Pope Francis, talked about the church being a field factory. You go out and get the wounded and bring them in and take care of them. And that's really what the House of Mercy is all about. Really living out mercy, the spiritual and corporal works of mercy. I was hungry, you gave me food. I was thirsty, you gave me drink. We try to live that out every single day. So one day when I was reading this book, I get every book on Pope Francis that I can find. I came across the words, indeed, Francis Church is to be recognized, first of all, as a house of mercy. I thought, hooray. Where the lonely and abandoned will discover a fuller existence, a church that will truly and deeply bear others' pains and difficulties, with the greatest tenderness, magnanimity, and solidarity, and will offer solace, hope, and encouragement to keep on walking. So our hope is that the House of Mercy will always live out this mercy in a city that has one of the highest rates of extreme poverty. Rochester, New York has one of the highest rates of poverty in the whole country. And that's serious, and it's not we don't have a good name as far as helping our poor. Child poverty is #1, and we see that every single day. So we have a great challenge ahead of us, and it's a challenge for all of us. The House of Mercy can't work alone. We need the help of the community. I'm going to read a letter from someone who met up with one of our homeless persons on the street. And the person's name was Cleveland. He wrote, I first met Cleveland 10 to 15 years ago when he asked me for money to buy shoes for his kids. Of course, I didn't believe him. And resented his approaching me. This took place, by the way, right outside of St. Mary's Church downtown. Well, over the years, I'd see him around since I worked downtown. Sometimes he'd ask for money, and sometimes he wouldn't. Sometimes I gave him $1, and sometimes I wouldn't. Once I gave him a Kennedy $50, and when he saw what it was, he got a great smile on his face, and happily walked away talking about JFK. It wasn't until a little over a year ago that I actually had a conversation with Cleveland. He'd be outside the Y when I'd arrived at 5 o'clock a.m. to work out. By then he'd been accepted by a couple of the guys at the Y who would get him a cup of coffee and give him a couple of dollars. It was then that I realized how selfish and rejecting I'd been in Cleveland. I started to say hello and ask how he was doing, and finally asked him his name. He told me he was Cleveland Green, but that some called him Stevie. He said he'd been put out of various shelters. That happens quite a bit. And put out of various shelters and apartments, but that he was doing okay. When I last saw him, he said he was down at the House of Mercy, and we at the Y agreed that you would be taking good care of him. Then I found his funeral notice in the paper. I went to his wake and was surprised to see how large a family he had. I spoke to an aunt who was very gracious. She shared how sweet he was as a young man growing up, and how he always had the most beautiful smile. I'm ashamed that it took me so long to see Cleveland as a human being, and not as some undesirable brother who seemed to be always in my way. I realize now that Cleveland was ministering to me all along. I just hadn't realized it. Thank God I finally did. So Cleveland was one of ours, and he was with, he was a great talker, always talking and up late at night. And he made friends with another homeless person at the House of Mercy who would guffaw, laugh out loud, and keep people awake. He was a good person. His name was David. We found David an apartment. He didn't want to go to it. And this is what we have sometimes happening. He didn't want to go. So we said, well, David, you know, it'd be good for you to be in an apartment. So he finally agreed one day he would go look at it. So he went to look at it, didn't like it, didn't want to stay there. So he said, come on, David, you know, try it out. So he did. He's still there in that apartment. But he was laughing so loud that he would bother other tenants, you know, in the building. So then we got a call, you know, from the building owners and said, you got to get him out of here. You got to get rid of him. He's keeping people away. And we said, no, you know, let's work this out. Try to find another place in the building where he could stay, which they did. And so he has his own room now, and he's happy there. He's very happy there, and he's still there. This was like 3 years ago. You know, so it shows that you not only help people to move on, but you have to walk with them wherever they go. Because many of our people are mentally ill, and we don't get the help from mental institutions that we should be getting. And so we keep them, we have them. And I'm going to close with just one last thing. When the hospitals send homeless people to us, they'll send mentally ill people that are in wheelchairs, that are handicapped. And one day they sent a man to us, but didn't drop him off at the House of Mercy. They dropped him off down the street. When I arrived at the House of Mercy, people were telling me that this man was on the sidewalk. When I went up to him, he was one of ours, and the man couldn't walk. So he was sprawled on the sidewalk. That's where the hospital sent him. They didn't want him at the hospital, so they sent him to the House of Mercy, and they didn't even bring him right to the door of the House of Mercy. They had him out on the street, lying down on the sidewalk. Those are the kinds of things we see happening with the agencies that should be helping us and are not helping us. So great struggle. We're happy we're there, but we need much help in the community to help us take care of the people. We need the agencies helping us. We need the hospitals helping us. We need the mental institutions helping us, and we don't always get that kind of help. And I read the story, I read the letter we received, that I received, because so many people make judgments about our homeless. And that's one of the things that really bothers me, when people prejudge our homeless when they don't know why they are homeless.